Morning, everyone, and yeah, we brought the Arab weather with us. It's great. My name is Colin Brown. I'm going to be your MC for this event.
Exactly. It's not individual people talking. So we want, if you want to have, just
everyone,
feel free. It's
okay.
A free form.
Everyone can hear me.
Okay.
Welcome. This is a first-of-a-kind conference, partnership between the market, the Marché du Film, through the Cannes Next program. I think Stan and everyone is here. Ourselves at the Arab Cinema Center, and Neom, which you'll be hearing more about later, the creative cluster in Saudi Arabia that's being built faster than you think in northwest part of that kingdom. It's a first-of-a-kind event because usually this part of the world is covered individually. Individual focuses on particular countries, which is fine. But we thought it would be great to have a 360 overview of this entire MENA region, stretching from Mauritania in the Far East all the way to, I think the farthest west part is Oman, 22 countries. And what a year to be doing this at Cannes, because apart from the weather, there are, in the festival alone, 14 Arab language films and some shorts. 14, that's, as far as we know, is a record. Tonight is the Tunisian film is playing in competition, so we have an Arab film in the main competition. Tomorrow, I believe, is the screening of Goodbye Julia, the first Sudanese film ever to go into the festival. We have 2 Jordanian films, first time at the festival. It's an amazing banner year, and that doesn't even include all the films that have been either finished or, in various stages of production at the market. So it's a really good time to look at this world of MENA. This is going to be a 3-part event, and we sort of divide it into the first part you'll hear behind me for everyone. I'm sorry, I'm obscuring your view. Will be about financing and partners. And I want to say that one of the things that really drove us here was that there's a temptation to some parts to look at the Arab world merely as a market. And yes, it's a really exciting market. It's probably we think it's the largest untapped marketplace in the world. But just don't look at this as a place to, for other films in the other parts of the world or TV series to come for financing, etc. It's a marketplace in of its own right that's exporting its own creative talent and wealth of talent that is, which we'll also hear about in the third panel when we do locations and talent. So it's a two-way street. Some quick numbers, just so you know, just context here. It's about 460 million people, more or less, living in this area, across 22 countries. It's incredibly diverse in all aspects. Yes, there's a shared language, but obviously lots of dialects of that language. It's geographically diverse. Economically diverse, and even cinematically diverse, because actually it is one of the oldest film places on the planet. There was a film screened in Alexandria in 1896, and it's also one of the youngest cinemas in the world. We all are very familiar now probably with Saudi Arabia, and the return of cinemas after 35 years. So in the space of 5 years, it's gone from a zero, box office, commercial box office, to, and it was, if it hadn't been for a ticket price change in the last quarter of the last year, Saudi Arabia in 5 years would have ended up with being the top grossing Arab country in a year eclipsing the UE last year from 0 5 years ago. So that's the pace of change. But we wanted to look at the whole map and how it works together. So just a couple of housekeeping, or one housekeeping notice here before I hand it over to Nick to moderate the next panel. We want to keep this going. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. We want to give everyone time to speak and so on, and move everything forward. So there won't be time to have questions, and I think most of the questions will be very specific anyway to people's projects or their own individual questions. But, and this is important to know, at the end of this session, of the 3 panels, there will be a reception here, like refreshments, and this is where you can find the speakers and talk to them, buttonhole them, and we will, on these screens around us, put email addresses of ACC and Neom for any questions you may have, or we will refer you to people, to answer those. So I think with that, and I'll keep coming up and down between panels, but with that, I'm going to leave the stage and hand the mic over to Nick Vivarelli of Variety for the first panel. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Colin. Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Vivarelli. I cover Italy and the Middle East for Variety, and I'm going to introduce my panelists here. We have Zainab Abu Al-Sam, General Manager of NBC Studios of Saudi Arabia. We have Rula Nasser of the Imaginarium Films, Jordan, who has been responsible for production of several films, including Inshallah It's a Boy, The Alleys, and Holy Spider. We have Ala Fadan, CEO and Chairman of Telfaz 11, which is a very dynamic production company in Saudi Arabia, doing a lot of great stuff. We have Michel Zana, Head of Dulac Productions and Distribution, based in France, who does production and distribution. We have Afnan Siraj, Head of Co-Productions and Digital Content at ART, based in Saudi Arabia. The company, which is one of the backers of Kauthar Ben-Hanya's Four Daughters, which is premiering in competition today here in Cannes. And we have Ala Karkouti, CEO of Mad Solutions, which is a company that does a lot of stuff, including distribution and sales of Arab films. Zainab, I'm going to start with you. And the overarching theme of this panel is, in a nutshell, the connection, let's say, that is being established between the Arab world and the international industry. Okay. So the first thing I think would be interesting to hear a little bit more about from you is just NBC is this huge driver for the Saudi industry at the moment. Millions and millions of dollars are being invested. There's a lot of great stuff in the pipeline. And so I'd just like to hear from you about some of the more high-profile projects that have some kind of international element to them that are in your pipeline at the moment.
All right. Hello. Hi, everyone. I want to go one step behind to introduce NBC, or maybe shed some light on who we are, and maybe it would be clearer. So NBC produces the biggest number of Arabic shows in the world, scripted, unscripted. It has different initiatives or different companies within. So we've got the channels spread across the Arabic countries. We've got the platform, Shahid. And then we have the studio, an academy, talent agents. So all in all, we try to produce Arabic content and have a 360 all around that ecosystem. Lately, the boom in production in Saudi has become such a lucrative market where There's so much opportunities, and especially in Saudi, we have different opportunities to do diverse things. So we could be focusing on local productions for the local people, but yet we do international productions within the regions on different levels. We could partner up with other production companies to co-produce. We, from a different point of view, so we have the highest where we co-produce properly, two big mega production houses. We could do production while we service, and even if we actually do collaborations with talent from the international markets to try and structure our stories or try to benefit from different expertise and have a diverse, internationally structured project, but with a very, very local flavor.
Okay, I mean, let's delve into this a little bit deeper. I think one of the sort of flagship projects that encapsulates the international scope is a film called The Warrior, which I think is completed, is going to be surfacing pretty soon. It's a mega budget, more than $100 million movie that was shot in Neom, which is a very interesting hub at the moment, where NBC has studios. So yeah, I think if you could just tell us a little bit about that project as a sort of case study of maybe the most prominent NBC project that has some, that has international elements to it.
So, Desert Warrior is directed by Rupert Wyatt.
Desert Warrior, sorry.
Desert Warrior.
Forgive me.
Rupert Wyatt, and produced by Jeremy Bolt. It stars Anthony Mackie, Sir Ben Kingsley, and Aisha Hart. The unique thing about this film is the story is relevant to the region. It's a historic story. It's a period piece. When we produced this happened in Neom, and to have that kind of mega project happening as a first production in Neom was both challenging, but also it opened up other things to happen in that region, in that place. We had a massive set. We've had 900 people at a time existing on the same set. The beautiful thing is we did have a blend of local and international talent. So we had crew that would be local and coming from the region. We've got a lot of extras and some parts that went to local talent. To have those two exist in the same place opened up a lot of things. Because of Desert Warrior, we have more and more intrigue from the young people, because in their ecosystem, a lot of people would be connected to that film. And it opened up a lot of opportunities to produce more in Neom. And Neom has been great with facilitating so many of the studios, the infrastructure, and to have that big project happening, you would need a strong partner like Neom.
Okay, and it is structured as a co-production, or in other words, maybe not a co-production, but a partnership.
It's a partnership. It is produced by NBC Studios, but it is partnered for distribution
with AGC Studios,
AGC, yes.
Stuart Ford. Okay, so I think that is an interesting example of a big film coming out of Saudi that not only helps foster the industry, but also has potential to fly the flag around the world. And the storyline encompasses Saudi elements, but also has a sort of Hollywood-type narrative to it as well. It's a blend in some way of these elements. So I think it's very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see, obviously, how it does. There's also at Neom a big NBC show called Rise of the Witches, which I think is interesting because of the scope, right? It's the most expensive show, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very high production value. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Rise of Witches is being produced right after Desert Warrior. So we benefited from all the things that we've already laid the ground for. It's different in terms of it being a very local production. It's based on a very high-selling novel by a Saudi author called Osama Sallam, and it's a fantastical, magical, women-oriented show. It's a 10 episode, and we had a huge production in terms of talent. So we've got 160 different characters. It was all mythical, and this is one of the first genres that we could produce that would be local and has that local flavor. It really challenged us, because you always, when you come to talk about, for example, witches, you've seen it in the media. You go a certain way, they do this, they do that. There is some kind of language that we've established, but to go and reinvent that definition, because we have never done that, was challenging, but also very, very fun, and the creative process was crazy. But you get something that the young people connect to, and this book it has a massive following from Generation Z, from the millennials growing up. The author is very young. It's a very, very exciting show that we're very excited about.
Okay, and I think it has a female empowerment theme.
It's about two main witches and how they challenge the world, and they kind of rise, and a story of unity.
Okay, so we're looking forward to that. I think what another significant element of what's in your pipeline in terms of how it relates to the industry outside of Saudi is the use of non-Saudi screenwriters in several of your high-end shows. I think that it's been a huge opportunity for them, but also for you. So maybe you could tell us about a couple of the shows that are emblematic of that.
All right. I'll tell you how it's set up, because we don't have one rigid way of doing things, because we have a lot of opportunities, and the appetite is large for a lot of productions. We need to develop different ways of doing things better and better every single time. So we have our stories that are written by local writers. Some of the more complicated stories or more challenging ones, or the bigger ones also, we collaborate with international talent. So we have, for example, a head writer or a coach writer, and we have a local writing room, and dialogues are written by locals. The structure is maybe set by the international one, and it's not just like a blanket. It needs to work. So the room needs to work with the writer, and sometimes we change things just to have the chemistry, to get the best of both worlds and not compromise on the authenticity.
Okay. So obviously there's an opportunity for writers in Saudi Arabia, and the writers are part of the process of fostering an industry, essentially.
They're the most important element at this point, yeah.
Okay. And then I think there are also other opportunities, though, and I think there are opportunities for producers. If you could talk to me a little bit about that, about just, how you think this huge engine that you are driving, basically, can be an opportunity for collaborations with industry people outside of Saudi.
Individuals, you mean?
Yeah. We're here in Cannes. I think people are interested in how they can dialogue with you, essentially.
So when it comes to individuals, it's the same as writing. We do collaborate with international talent. Even like for Rise of Witches, we had international producers and directors alongside cultural directors to have the story relevant. DOPs, a lot of HODs we get from international markets. Also, I'm heading Academy in MBC. We get a lot of collaborations where we have them mentor a lot of young people that want to get into the industry. So we cannot just survive on one region and focusing on it. We want to open up, and that diversity, I think, brings some charm into the productions, and combining both cultures makes a lot of things a little bit more special, and the young talent learns, and the international becomes more rounded. On every single level, we don't have one way of doing things. It's kind of, and everything in Saudi now, it's kind of entrepreneurial, where we need that kind of flexibility, where we collaborate and exchange expertise and change things if it doesn't work and go back and change some more.
Okay, so in a nutshell, there's a flexible model and a lot of opportunity. Rula, you have been interacting with the international film community for a long time. I just want to ask you about how that is evolving at the moment. I believe you're working in Jordan, of course, but also in other parts of the Middle East. And if you could give us just a sort of snapshot of the big international productions that are coming to the Middle East, and what the pulse of the situation is at the moment in that respect.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We can say yes, there is a lot of demand, and it's becoming bigger and bigger with time. I think the more incentives is coming out of the region is it is the power that is attracting more and more international production. The amount of international production that is shooting now in whether Jordan, Saudi Arabia, or even Abu Dhabi, and even Lebanon, it's getting more, but all those productions are looking for incentives. So this is now, I think, the game changer in the area. It's the incentives, and
Saudi Arabia just not too long ago announced their 40%, I believe, incentive. Neom has its own incentive. How important do you think these are? They're the latest ones, the new.
There is a lot of changes on the service industry in the region. Part of it is the incentives. Second part is the studios. Now, Jordan are opening studios very soon. Neom has so many studios. Al-Ula is working on another studios, and same for Riyadh. All those even assets, let's say, the studios will not work if there is no incentives. So this is how it complements each other. In addition to the talents, the rates we are facing in the area.
How about the crews? I mean, my impression is that Jordan has very good crews, and these crews are now benefiting because they're not just working in Jordan. They're working in Al-Ula. They're working in other parts of the region.
The Jordanian team, the Egyptian team, and the Lebanese team. So no one get angry. Are moving around. I think we have a very good infrastructure in terms of incentives and the base. However, still we need a lot to work on the talents, because this big change happening in the area was coming from one side without developing the other sides, which is the talents that can serve such a need.
Well, by talents, you mean the creative talents, or you mean just the crew talents?
No. Usually I wear two hats.
Okay.
One of the hat is a producer that
of course
develop content and try to finance and make films, and the other hat, which is the production services. If I want to speak about the production services, this is the crews.
Okay.
Which is we need hands to work in the market, and now even in the Saudi Arabia, there is Tunisian are working there. So it's all the talents from the Arab world is coming to this area, to serve as a crews. When I speak about talents, which is the creative, that is another topic.
So there's a gap in that respect from what you're saying. Okay.
I think all of us is aware of that gap. We always communicate, whether it's with the Saudi Arabia, with Neom, with Al-Ula, with Jordan, because it's the same crews that is like almost serving a lot of those productions.
So that's on the production side, let's say. Now, on the creative side, there's always been a lot of, for years there's been talk about the sort of pan-Arabic, working together, but it's never, in my mind, it's never really, really happened. What is your take on that? Is this something that, the industry is now in a good momentum. Do you think there's more of a chance of that happening?
Part of that will come to Ala.
Okay.
Which is when we speak about finance and distribution. Finance and distribution are one circle. we are in a much better stage in terms of finance. But again, when I say pan-Arab, I'm thinking of distribution. Who's my audience? And this is our biggest channel. Today, MBC is a big platform that they have their audience and they are accepting talents. But we have the independent talents where we go back and say, we can finance. Today we financed Inshallah Walad. They financed Goodbye Julia. What is the distribution? And this is how we can say what we can do as Pan-Arab. I did a couple of projects with Imagination a couple of years ago, trying to change and do a Pan-Arab to sell more. We were not very successful, honestly. We tried to do Indian and Emirati. We tried to do Egyptian and Emirati just to open up for more audience. And that is not getting there yet.
Is that because of is it because of a linguistic barrier? Is it because the different types of Arabic? Is it cultural? Or is the idea of something pan-Arabic cinema or television just sort of...
I think, Ala, we need to differentiate between the domestic distribution and the international, right?
It's very complicated, honestly, because when it comes to these cinemas, you have many elements when it comes to push the Arab titles, and when we're talking about titles which not necessarily the super art house films, by the way, because there's many films went to festivals, by the way, Inshallah, a boy, at the end it has the commercial element, the Alice, it has the commercial elements, and many other films. But first, who's the structure of the audience? We don't have yet, actually we're talking 2 weeks ago in Paris about this, how of course France way more established. We don't have the option of exploring content since the schools. It's not part of the schools of the universities to explore, to watch something unusual or unexpected or not related to the super commercial film. So in general, the different Arab countries need to work the governments or to create something related to education, because this is what will create a new audience, fresh audience, and new talents, because to take seriously more the careers, and we talked about it, maybe in Jordan, because since now 20 years of the shooting there, it created a team, but still it's not enough. There's a huge hunger in Saudi Arabia, yes, great talents, but still not enough for the demand of the content. So there's the education part, I believe it's super essential. The other thing also about the audience, you need stars. The star-driven content, and we don't have many. It's mainly the Egyptian, of course, stars, which is normal. It's like Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood. But you don't have the same with the other nationalities. It depends. And that's why you will find many nationalities working in a Saudi working in Egyptian, or Lebanese working in Egyptian, or Syrian, etc. So it needs a little bit long term, but the good step happened. It's getting faster in terms of surprises of hits, like what happened, I think.
Okay, yeah, that gives me a perfect lead-in to you, Ala. Basically, you know, your company germinated from YouTube content, and now you're doing films and TV series that are really at the forefront of the pop culture explosion in Saudi Arabia. You have an 8-picture deal with Netflix, and you've had a couple of really big box office hits with really very specifically Saudi films. So yeah, if you could talk to me just about that, about the philosophy behind what you do, and about why I think it'd be interesting if you could talk to us about Sattar and why it did so well.
Thanks, Nick. Good morning, everybody. Tilfaz, let me tell you about Tilfaz a little bit and what we do first. We're a media company, we're pretty young, about 12 years. Started, like you said, we started on YouTube. The company is, based on mainly 3 pillars. It's the digital content that we started with and everybody knows us for, and gave us popularity and notoriety and followership. And then there's the creative services and how we service clients to kind of give them content that's similar to ours. And also that's how we kind of monetize our digital content through the creative agency. And then there's the newest third pillar, which is a few years old now, which is the studios part, and includes the production and production services and also distribution. In terms of how we reached to Sattar today, which broke Saudi film records, and now it's in the top 4 and historically in the box office of all time in Saudi, and that's our first feature film. It's not an overnight success. We've been actually learning for 12 years, creating content, and actually starting from YouTube gave us an edge, and started digital. And I always have this fun thing that I'm saying that in Saudi we kind of evolved backwards when people are now are really focusing on, they started in film and then now they're trying to figure out social and digital. For us, we started digital and then now we're trying to figure out film, which is really interesting to me. But because we started in digital, there was, first of all, it was very cheap, right? We weren't a broadcaster. We didn't have all this capex that we have to invest in to reach everybody. It was the democratization of media. It was very easy to reach people, and millions of people. But at the same time, it was a two-way communication. So whenever we created content, we got feedback right away. And the content it was really easy to do. It was, a couple of weeks we have a video, or a week or two, we have a video, and we get the feedback right away. Unlike feature films, sometimes takes years of investment and work and development and then production and then distribution before you know if it's a good film or not, or if people like it or not. So for us, all this time where we're building experience, understanding the culture, and then we focused specifically, and you're speaking about Pan-Arab, we were the opposite. We did not worry about Pan-Arab content. We actually focused on what we know, what our culture we felt was missing in terms of content. And that's the content we did. We spoke our language, told our own jokes, and it resonated with people. And that's how we kind of started getting a following. And from there, all this learning that came with the content, then we come to cinemas opening. Now it's, there's great opportunity. It's actually something that people can do different from just going to restaurants or, meeting up in coffee shops. And now we can tell stories on a different screen. And from there, because of all this experience and how I understand it, not just because we have a competitive advantage of actually being born and raised there, but also all this experience actually doing content feedback, we understand what they like, what makes them laugh, where the borders are, what's too much, what's not too much. And then Sattar comes out, and it's a runaway hit. 900.
Now, is it playing outside of Saudi?
It has. It's actually, we're very proud that it was one of the first Saudi films that was actually distributed outside of Saudi. Of course, GCC, that goes without saying. But it was Odin theaters that actually, they're like, we heard the Sattar film's doing pretty good. We have a pretty good Saudi and Arab community in London. Can we put it in our exhibitions? And then they premiered it there, and it showed there for a while.
So yeah, I think in a way you encapsulate a perfect example of where you don't need to interact with the industry outside. You need to
Right.
you need to go. You need to focus on your local culture, and you have the know-how to do that. Having said that, what kind of openings do you think Telfaz could have or already has with the industry, the international industry? I mean, aside from your 8-picture deal with Netflix, which of course is important.
Right, on all different levels. Of course, the 8-picture Netflix deal was very important for us, not just because just we're telling your stories and it's a platform for us to reach the international community, but these films were also a chance for us to kind of work with international crews. Like you said, there's a lot of people from Tunisia, from North Africa, that they're very experienced crew, and Saudi is the industry is a nascent industry. We're still yes, we've been doing YouTube, but we haven't been doing films for so long. We have a lot of stories to tell, but the expertise, we're still building it. And a big part of it, and there's a lot of demand for talents in Saudi, and there's a lot of demand for content. And there's still some time before we can be self-reliant on our own talents. And that's why I think it's very important to kind of bring the expertise from abroad, and like really really good people who have been working on films, on award-winning films, above the line, below the line, everything. There's a lot of room for that, and it's important for us to kind of work with this international crew, have them come work on our films, have local crew members shadow them, work to them, gain that expertise, and I think that's the only way to scale. In Saudi, there's a lot of potential, but it needs a lot of learning, and there's a learning curve that needs to we need to go through.
Okay, okay. So I think for the international film community, there's opportunities in interacting with Telfaz for sure.
Right.
And Telfaz is working in such a way where the films that are coming out and doing really well in Saudi, probably because they're so specific to Saudi, will have the opportunity to travel far, far away outside of national confines. Michel, you basically represent a bridge between the Arab world and France, by extension Europe, both as a distributor, an exhibitor, and a producer. Can you talk to us about how well or how Arab films are doing, let's put it, and how this is evolving at the moment? What's the state of affairs, let's say, for Arab cinema, and for the exchange between the Arab cinema world and the European world?
Good morning. We in France have a very long history with Middle East cinema. A lot of co-production schemes were made with the CNC, with the Center of Cinema. So I believe that we are the biggest territory for theatrical release. We have like 2,000 cinemas in France, with more than 1,200 art house, which is something like 3,000 screens in France. So as the biggest territory in theatrical release, I think that Arab cinema and Middle East cinema, who is very strong the last 20 years and maybe much more since 2011, is doing very well in France. And little by little, we used to have very important directors, Elias Suleiman and Din Labaki, who opened, in a way, for me, who opened the way. I don't speak about, of course, Youssef Chahine, but it was mostly one of the biggest director from Egypt before 2000, and so it's developing a lot, and I think that we have incredible numbers with Arab cinema the last years. Wajda was maybe the biggest result in France, with Tarek Saleh, and because it's more than 500,000 admissions, 550. So so we are a very strong, of course, a very strong territory, and because of France, it goes out of France like Europe. I mean, I think that we are a very important territory to open the film out of France, Europe, United States. So yes.
So you co-produce as well. Now, let me ask you this. What I've gathered is that there is a change in the narratives, let's say, that are coming from the Arab world into the international film circuit. Whereas before, Arab directors, because they didn't have any financing, they really they relied on France, essentially, and Germany, maybe to a certain extent. It was so crucial for them to have that financing that in some way there was a school of thought that said that they were making these films for the European audience, okay? Whereas I think my impression is that now, possibly because there's more forms of financing locally, okay, and there's also more of an audience locally, thanks to people like Ala, okay, the stories are more specific. They're less kind of winking at the, you know, what the Europeans might want to see out of the Arab world. Does that make any sense?
I think that there is, from my point of view, there is. It was. I mean, the cinema was already very strong and very important before, before the revolutions, the last revolution in 2011, and it, in a way, it opened the path for many young directors who and women director also, who. Decided and who were able to develop more and to co-produce more and be distributed more. So yes, of course, in terms of subject, it was more and more open, and it was totally different because we used to have maybe a few voices from the Arab world, and it continues to multiply, and little by little we had more and more. And of course, it's because of the festivals, all the festivals who came, who were created little by little, and also the production workshops, Marrakesh, Guna, and I mean there is many, and Red Sea more recently. So no, I feel that it's in development, and it's going to grow much more, little again still, and it's very important, and I feel that it's going to be much more strong the next years. And because it's Arab cinema, it's so many countries, it's really large. So and also I feel that in terms of formations, there is more and more production workshop, more and more producers are trained, and this is very good because it helps directors and writers to be on the right path, which was, from my point of view, a big something very difficult before. Many directors, writers didn't know so well how to develop, and it was not enough producers. But I feel, because I'm interested by Middle East Arab cinema, I'm distributing since 20 years exactly, so I felt really something growing, and many producers are developing, and it's great.
So yeah, so I think it's important that it's no longer a sort of situation where you go to France and then, you know, the French producer has to shepherd the project. It's a much more hands-on type of the local production people.
More and more. And when you are a French producer and you want to produce a film from Middle East or Arab world, it's of course the director and the content, the script. This is very important. But if you don't have in front of you someone who knows production, I've been in many production workshops, meeting many directors, and always I felt that they were not with the right producer, even with a producer. Sometimes it was someone who was learning production, so it was. And and you don't want to participate because you feel that you're not living in Egypt, you're not living in Lebanon, you know. So you need to have someone to build.
Okay.
And the fact that this is growing up little by little, this is why we have more and more co-production between countries. And so I think it's important, and that's the situation now. There is a lot of more directors also, trained, and it will develop more co-production between France. And of course, making co-production with France will enable you to co-produce with Germany, with other European countries. So it's, yeah. I feel that France has a big importance, as Germany also, who is also a very important country in co-productions, with many funds, maybe more than France. But the difference with Germany is they don't have any art house circuit. They don't have art house cinemas. So they co-produce a lot, but then when the film is completed, except maybe Elia Suleiman, Nadine Labaki, exceptions, they don't distribute the film. Sometimes it's kind of technical release, which is not the case in France. In France, we really have a very big, strong market, and I feel that it's thanks to this market to have directors being bigger and bigger, and I feel that it will continue, because I don't think that Germany will build art house cinemas in the future. So I think we will stay in Europe, the most important in theatrical.
Okay, vive la France. Afnan, you came on board Kauthar Ben-Hanya's film, which is playing in competition today, and I think it's a perfect example of a film that is very that is born from the culture, you know, of the Arab world, not just Tunisia, and that is going to tell people outside, you know, both in the Arab world but outside the Arab world, a lot of things about being a woman, essentially, in the Arab world. And I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch, how this film plays, okay? But of course, in the Arab world, it's going to be released in movie theaters, but then it's going to be released on ART. So if you could tell me about just the basic, information. The basic question is how you came on board the film, when and how you came on board the film.
Okay, let me first introduce what my company does. So ART, we work in co-production, financing, and distribution. For Kauthar Ben-Hanya's movie in specific, we've followed on the project since it's still a first rough draft, and of course we believe in Kauthar and all her achievements in most of the festivals. We've worked with her previously on The Man Who Sold His Skin, that was nominated in the Oscars. And that's it. You just said it. We believe in women empowerment, and we know that Kauthar her movie will rock everywhere. And we followed on it when it was just a kind of less than a rough draft, and we were very excited on it, and we came on board. We co-produced it, and here it is in Cannes today.
Okay, terrific. Now, what's Ala and both of you? I mean, what's the rollout plan going to be for the Middle East? It's going to be in theaters, and it's going to get a theatrical release, I would imagine. What's the plan, Ala?
For Goodbye Julia, or?
Well, for Four Daughters.
Four Daughters with the RT, but yes, there will be a plan for theatrical.
The theatrical release, yes, it's not with you, Alexa. Yes, it's with Film Clinic. Yes, the plan is the movie gets first theatrically released in the international region, and then in the Middle East, and then it's off to go on platforms and satellite channels.
Okay.
And in France, it's Jour de Fête.
Okay.
Distributing it.
Okay, so it will get a good deal of exposure because it'll have a theatrical release. I know it'll have a theatrical release in Tunisia,
Yes.
which is a big deal. I mean, and then we'll see. I guess we don't know the details of, but I think it's a safe bet that it will go into movie theaters in most of the countries in the Arab world, and then. Aside from that, just the fact that it's on the platform will give it a lot of visibility.
Of course, and we always make sure that the movies we participate in as having a great exposure. It's not that only we sell it to a platform and it stays there forever. We distribute it in a way that most of the platforms in the Middle East do have the movie, and it gives a lot of exposure from many countries could get to know about the movie.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is an important film. I think the more visibility it gets, it needs to have visibility, especially in the Arab world. Ala, how, we touched on this before. I mean, how is the market changing for art house cinema in terms of getting it into movie theaters in the Arab world?
It's still the toughest part because we don't have base for art house cinema. Of course, France is the ideal example. You're talking about, as Michel said, and there's this regular dealing with universities, schools. You have the audience to explore. They have a great success recently with a documentary finding. Yeah, and it's staying for 4 or 5 weeks now, getting more admissions, etc. In the Arab world, it's tricky. There is art house cinemas, but it's nothing for the bigger number of more than 400 million people around. So you cannot count on this. But at the same time, it's the much better space for art house becoming more on platforms. We already, with Shahid, recently we signed many films actually, including inshallah, well, at the first run of the film, it will be on Shahid even before it was selected in Cannes. And this is a sign that there is more understanding for the importance of diversity of films, etc., and also about who's making the films, even if you don't have a stars. We keep pushing the films in cinemas. Yes, most of the time we don't get great results, but for example, actually, yesterday there's the film society, Egyptian Film Society. They give an awards every year. Last year, we released 2 Jordanian films in Egyptian cinemas, and it was the first time ever to release a Jordanian film, because the Egyptian market, it's either Hollywood or Egyptian films. The films didn't work well, anyhow, but the best Arab film from this film society went to the Jordanian film Daughters of Abdurrahman, because the criteria to be released in cinemas, in Egyptian cinema. For us, it's a step, because yes, it might be slow, but it's a step. Even if you didn't have any money, but you're getting awareness, and you're being beside the other Egyptian winners, and you're getting the space. The other thing, it's also how to not to put a super high expectations or difficult film. In Saudi Arabia now, the theatrical release is becoming way and more harder and complicated, because it is about, of course, the revenues, same like the Hollywood system. The COVID killed the option of giving more space and more diversity in the films you're taking. You want more revenues, plus you have to go to the secured success, which is now the Saudi and Egyptian content. Either with that, we keep releasing. There is a space, but not the exposure, because you cannot invest a lot on the advertising for the art house or independent film or the medium budget film. The other side, the star power, which we talked about it. Yes, we have stars, but still it's not super driven to the cinemas, and this helps a lot. It helped, of course, with some films like Saba Mubarak and Daughters of Abdurrahman, and Munzir Rayahna in Al-Hara, The Alleys. It helps, of course. So how to build it in a bigger role, That's regionally, Internationally, how to push the films. Yes, it needs a lot of work. It is happening, but also when we say the Arab world, it's like saying European cinema. You cannot deal with it as but at least you have similar culture in a way. If there is an audience, they will relate, whether it's Jordanian, Sudanese, Tunisian, Moroccan, most of the stories they will be related. That's why we keep naming it the Arab cinema. Internationally, it's getting much better, actually, comparing with the Arab world when it comes to the art house films, in terms of financing, in terms of sales, in terms of production, and in terms of even theatrical release, comparing with the Arab world, because there is more prepared audience for that. So that's why, for example, we don't only work on the features, we work on the shorts, which also, by the way, by Shahid or Netflix or OSN, they started taking the shorts because you need to change the mindset of the audience to get used to explore. They can explore stupid films, but they don't like to explore, unknown art house independent films. So it needs maybe a longer time, but it's changing super fast with what's happening through NBC, Netflix. Telfaz was doing, Rula, the adventures and risks she's taking with the different films. So ART, which was way before Saudi Arabia opening up.
Yeah, so I think in a nutshell, I'm being told we need to wrap this up, but I think in a nutshell, what we're seeing is an ecosystem which is evolving in a positive way and opening up to more opportunities for interaction with the international film industry. And we've seen different facets of this today, and I thank you very much for giving us this insight. Okie dokes. Onwards and upwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.